Good evening, everybody, and thank you very much for making time out of your schedule to be a part of this conversation. And I think that's a great lead-in, as Anthony just mentioned. Now, this is an issue that should concern every single one of us, regardless of whether we have kids in the system or not. I want to thank a couple of leaders in the community, fellow elected officials, Representative Edith Ajello. Appreciate you being here, Representative. And former Councilman Sam Zurier, appreciate you being here a great deal as well. Leaders of the Downtown Neighborhood Association and all the folks from the community. It's Mommy's late day in law school today, and so I'm here with Omar. Hopefully he won't be too much of a distraction, but he'll be a good boy. And he's very friendly if he walks around a little bit. So please pardon that. What I'd like to do today is something that we've been doing throughout the city, and hosting these small, intimate conversations with neighbors and with different community groups on education. Of course, if folks want to talk about things beyond education, that's perfectly fine. But I do want to focus most of today's conversation on education specifically. I'll speak for a little bit on where we've been, where we are, and where we're going, and then I'll sit back and we'll turn this into a conversation, because I'd love to hear what you all have in mind, and I'd love to have love to hear any questions that you have for me as well. So with that said, jumping into the state of our schools and how we got here. Many of you know that this has been in the making for a very, very long time. Back in 1993, there was a similar report than the one done by John Hopkins just recently, and here we are, 26 years later, and our schools are still in a similar shape. You may remember that about 2 years ago, I clashed with the teachers union as we were negotiating the contract. And I called at that time for a transformational contract, because I believed then, as I believe now, that the days of sort of nipping at the margins, making improvements around the edges, those days are over. We know that that's just not cutting it, and it's not going to be enough. We need transformational change. And so when I went into the budget negotiations, that's the position that I took. And then as we went through, I came to realize that you just can't do transformational change through the normal negotiation process. It just cannot happen. Just the rules at the state level around contract arbitration, everything is designed to protect the status quo, and you can't do transformational change through negotiations. You said it was okay if make a little bit of mess.
Oh yeah, that's fine.
Okay, good.
And it's like my living room.
And when that realization kicked in, that's when the conversations with the state, that's when they began more formally about then coming in, and effectively this is the nuclear option. When those conversations picked up. And so we decided to start the process by asking RIDE to do this report. And we allowed them into our schools. We said, talk to anyone. We want you to give us the full, true, and accurate, transparent picture of what you see. And that's what led to the report. Since then, there's been a lot of community engagement. A lot of people have gotten engaged and involved. And I'll tell you that, while we face significant headwinds, I am extremely, extremely optimistic about what's in store. Now, I do want to speak about some of these headwinds, because they are real and we all need to be very much aware of them. The reality is that there is not a single example of a successful state intervention into an urban school district that has worked. There's not a single example in the United States of America. So that's what we're up against. It's a daunting, daunting task. One thing that we have working for us is that typically when these things are done, they're done by a Republican governor to a district that's run by a Democratic mayor. And so from the beginning, there's tension and there's a clash. And to do something this big and this challenging, you just need everyone pulling in the same direction. And you need the community to embrace it. You need everyone to play a part. And so that just hasn't been the case in other places, but we have that advantage here, that we have a good working relationship and we can make that happen here in Rhode Island. Now, what's going to be the difference here in Providence than what we've seen in other cities and states? I truly believe that the secret sauce to getting this right, among so many other challenging things that have to be done, but I think that the secret sauce has to be community and stakeholder engagement. If the entire community, if we wrap our arms around our school department and our school district, I truly believe that there is nothing we can't accomplish. If every single parent is demanding the highest quality education for their kid and continuously doing it, there's nothing we can't accomplish. And if every young person feels empowered and feels as though they have a voice and they too demand the best education that can be provided, then we can accomplish anything. If you think back to the report, with all the challenges that were pointed out in the report, you'll notice that there's one thing that the report did not say. And the report did not say that we're not spending enough on education. Very interesting, it did not say that. You look at other districts, even urban districts throughout the country, that are performing better than us, yet spending either the same or less than us. So this is not a matter of simply spending more on education. Although, don't get me wrong, we're going to try to bring as many resources into the district as possible, and it'll be welcomed. But it's not simply a matter of spending more on education. And we're going to learn from other places that have done this. So the places going through it right now that has been pointed to a great deal is Lawrence, Massachusetts. And typically what you see when this happens is when the state comes in, they have additional tools and sometimes resources. And you see a spike in progress, and then when the state pulls out, it regresses back to the way that things have always been. So as we move forward, we need to make sure that the investments that are made are being done with a long-term perspective in mind, and not just something that's going to yield short-term results. So there may be some tensions there in terms of, I feel the urgency too to do something now, but I think it's most important that we lay a solid foundation so that this is sustainable over the long term. And then finally, what I'll share in terms of my role going through this process, my personal role and the city's role, I see as four things. First of all, the city is in charge of the school buildings, the facilities. And last year, voters approved investments of that allow us to make $278 million of investments to infrastructure in our schools. So all of that work will continue to be done. It'll be guided by the city, and of course we'll be collaborating with RIDE as we do that. Second, I see my role and my job as continuing to advocate for families, for stakeholders, and for students to continue to have their voices heard throughout every step of this process. Third, my role will continue to be to frankly acknowledge that our kids are in a classroom, in a school building, only 20% of the time that they're awake. The other 80% of their time, they're not in the building, they're out in the community, but there's just as much opportunity for learning and growth. Be it after school, be it summertime, be it connection to online learning tools and different resources. There's a lot that I will continue to invest in so that our kids are supported in that other 80% of time. And then the fourth part of it is, I plan to just be a resource and to be a partner to the turnaround superintendent when that person comes in. And whatever we can do to support their efforts, I want my entire administration, I want them to know that my entire administration is here to support their work. This truly is going to take the entire community, and we're going to be there every step of the way to make sure that we're supported. So that's a little bit about where we've been and where we're going. I'd like to open it up to have a conversation. I'm here to answer any questions you may have. I'd love to hear your thoughts and perspective, and I'll share mine as well on all these important issues. I'll just end on this point that I'll underscore once again. This has never been done. That's what's facing us. And if it's going to get done right, it's going to be because the entire community steps up and is part of the solution. And so thank you for being a part of the conversation. I look forward to continue engaging every one of you to be part of the solution.